Morning, all. All right, so 3 games tonight in the National Hockey League. So preview on this side of the board and news on this side. And yes, the Tampa Bay Magnet. It's funny, I mentioned in a live stream not too long ago that they didn't have the Tampa Bay one. I had all 31 teams except Tampa. Next day it was on NHL Shop. It's like there's somebody who works at the NHL Shop that went, oh crap, we didn't put that on the site. Anyways, we got 3 games tonight, starting at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. We've got two. One of these, of course, will be TBS. You have the TBS doubleheader every Wednesday. That's always my assumption. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. Calgary and Winnipeg. This is the game of the year for Calgary. So you're always going to hear it this time of the year. This is the most important game of the season. Yada yada yada. In Calgary's case, this is do or die. If they're going to have any chance of making the playoffs, they have to bounce back from a loss against Chicago, and they have to beat Winnipeg. Now, these teams split the first 2 games. November 12th, it was a 3-2 win for Calgary. January 3rd, it was a 3-2 win for Winnipeg. On the Calgary side, they're 36, 27, and 15 on the season. Their last 10 games are 6-3-1. They lost last night against Chicago. They cannot afford to fall behind. Their problem has been they're basically having to fight their way from a deficit. And while it worked the previous 2 games, eventually it's not going to work. They're 2 points behind Winnipeg. They're 1 point ahead of Nashville. Again, this is a very important game. On the Winnipeg side, they're 43, 31, and 3 overall. Their last 10 games are 5-5. They have won 2 in a row coming into this, and they look pretty darn good in those 2 games. They're 2 points ahead of Calgary. They also have a game in hand on Calgary, so that's the other problem. If you're the Flames, it's not just, well, we're 4 points back, but you also have a situation where Winnipeg's played fewer games. Nashville is, of course, 3 points back of Winnipeg. So if they win this one, especially in regulation, they basically solidify their hold on that final spot in the West. There's virtually no chance of them catching Seattle, and there we are. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the New York Rangers, a battle of third-place teams here, who I think will be picked to come out of their divisions. So these teams have split their first 2 meetings. October 11th, it was a 3-1 win for the Rangers. December 29th, it was a 2-1 shootout victory for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they've been close. Tampa Bay 45, 26, and 6. Their last 10 games are 6-4. They've won 3 in a row. They're 6 points back of Toronto. They have not been as good on the road as they are at home. So I would not be surprised to see a Rangers victory here. They're 45, 21, and 11. Their last 10 games are 7-2-1. They're 5 points back of the New Jersey Devils. So it's very likely it's going to be the Rangers, New Jersey, and the Rangers would be the road team. And there you go. 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, the Edmonton Oilers in against the Anaheim Ducks. So this has been a split series, but the Oilers have won 2 out of 3. Anaheim won the first meeting 4-3 on December 17th. January 11th, it was a 6-2 win for Edmonton. April the 1st, it was a 6-0 win for Edmonton, which means that I have to put the no mercy seal of approval on that one. At any rate, the Oilers are now 46, 23, and 9. Their last 10 games, they're 9-0-5. They've won 5 in a row. Last night's game against LA showed a tremendous amount of patience and maturity that the Oilers have now that I don't know that I've seen from them before. They're 3 points back of Vegas, at least not for a very long time. 3 points back of Vegas and 1 point ahead of the LA Kings. On the Anaheim side, they're 23, 44, and 10 overall. Last 10 games are 1-9. They've lost 8 in a row. They're tied with Chicago and 4 points back of San Jose. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting run when it comes to the Bedard situation because Columbus, Anaheim, and Chicago are all tied at the bottom of the league, but with the fewest regulation wins, Anaheim is officially 32nd. So we'll see if they stay there. My guess is, yes, that's why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. All right, so moving into news of the day territory. Starting off with, coming out of last night's loss, Rick Tocchet, questioning the team's compete level after their 4th straight loss. Again, and I talked about this yesterday too, the motivation for some teams down the stretch may not be there. They may already be of the mind of, well, we've missed the playoffs, what's the point? Don't want to get hurt. I'm not going to make that play. I might get hurt. Maybe you're less likely to block that slap shot from the point. Oh, Carlson's winding up? Yeah, no, I'm golfing in a week and a half. I'm going to let him take that shot. So I think there's some of that. Also, just bad habits have returned for the team. It is interesting, though, to see that the Canucks continue to sign NCAA players. They're up to, 5 now? At any rate, they are adding a lot of depth. They're adding, especially on the blue line, as many depth blue liners as possible. Keep in mind that coming into the season, Patrick Allvin had said that he wanted to fix the depth on the blue line, fix the blue line in general, and wasn't able to do that. And it is part of the issue with the Vancouver Canucks that's kept them as far out of the playoffs as they've been this year. So we'll see. There's another NCAA kid making his debut next game is the speculation. I think Hirose's been decent, but again, late in the season, these guys come in, they play, and there have been plenty of instances over the years where a guy will come in, play out of NCAA, and then the following season, they're just in the AHL. The NHL has announced there will be a game played in Salt Lake City, Utah, this coming fall. October the 5th, the LA Kings and the San Jose Sharks will be playing in Salt Lake City. So I think that's nice. Of all of the cities in the U.S., Salt Lake City just sounds like it should be a hockey city. It just sounds like that to me. At any rate, so that'll be a fun one to see the Kings and the Sharks playing there. Also, interesting news out of Philadelphia. John Tortorella, not behind the bench last night for that game against the St. Louis Blues. I swear I'm going to stop having animal pausings of this video soon. All right, so Tortorella, looking at things not from behind the bench but from upstairs, talking with Chris Drury, and basically along the lines of they're trying to evaluate this team at the end of the season, and I think it's deciding who to keep and who to move on from. And I think this is a good idea, to be honest. I think it's a good idea to have coach and GM together, especially in this situation where it's a new general manager, and discuss these things and discuss, okay, well, like for instance, he said that if there's certain criticism from the GM, he would say, yeah, we're working on that. We are aware of this issue this player has. We're trying to work with him on that. So I like this. It also allowed Rocky Thompson to run the bench, and he said this is a good chance for assistant coaches to, get an idea of how to run things and how things go as a head coach and have room to do their own stuff. And I like this a lot. Now, it leads me to wonder if Tortorella's role with Philadelphia next year will be something more than just head coach. If there might be... Now, how long has it been since we saw somebody who was a head coach and a general manager? Well, that really doesn't happen anymore, unless it's an emergency situation. But what about a head coach and an assistant general manager? Could that be something that's in the offing? So with Tortorella, he has a lot of experience, a lot of time behind the bench, and so I think that's something that's a good idea. Tortorella is... it feels like he's there for the long haul in Philadelphia. So I do like that pairing. And I like the idea of a coach for a couple of games going upstairs and talking. And he basically said, I didn't see much from up there. I didn't learn anything, but because he feels he can learn more behind the bench. But it was a chance for him to talk to the general manager and see that they're on the same page. So the Capitals have officially been eliminated from the playoffs. I haven't been talking about who is or isn't because we can kind of see that. Like last night, the Avs clinch and all that. But it is going to be the first time that Washington missed the playoffs since 2014. So it's been a long time since the Capitals missed the playoffs. And so the question then becomes one of, so the selling they did at the deadline, is that going to be it? Or are we going to see some other kind of movement on this team in the offseason? I would not be surprised to see some movement from this team in the offseason. But when you've got Ovechkin and he's chasing the all-time record, the team also needs to be competitive, and I think it will be, and I don't think they're going to be down for that long. It's going to depend on whether or not they can find the young players they need. And now we've seen teams able to add guys with value. I look at the Blues. At the deadline, what they did was actually really, really well done. They added some solid value for guys that, they traded out, but they've had a solid run since then. So the Capitals out of the playoffs, how long are they going to be out? So 100 points for MacKinnon last night. He reached the 100-point mark. I think that's great. So now he has a Stanley Cup. He has a 100-point season. Those are two things that I saw people saying a couple years ago. Proved he wasn't one of the best in the league. Now, of course, the argument would be, well, now everybody's getting 100 points. So whatever. That's my guess of where that's going to go. But also, it's interesting to see how Colorado's risen. They were 14 points behind the Dallas Stars for first in the division on January 15th. It is now a three-way tie for the lead. And this is only the second time in NHL history that there's been a three-way tie atop a division this late in the season. It was the Pacific Division back in, I think they said it was 16-17, like 2016-2017, where we saw that three-way lead. Like it would have been 1916-17 with the three-way tie atop the Pacific Division before the NHL existed. Anyways, the first back-to-back 100-point seasons as well for the Edmonton Oilers. since 85, 86, and 86, 87. Now, noteworthy there is 86, of course, they didn't win the Stanley Cup that year, as that was the infamous Steve Smith goal. And 86, 87, they did win the Stanley Cup, but they led the league in points both years, 119 and 106. And then they had 99 points in 87, 88. So that close to having 3 straight 100-point seasons. But it shows that the Oilers right now are experiencing a sustained level of success we have not seen for the Edmonton Oilers in a very, very long time. There have been decent runs where they might be underdogs. They've had a couple of really good years, but they haven't been able to follow those up with other really good years. This feels like something different. So when we talk about Stanley Cups in Canada, now it doesn't happen. The Oilers might be in a really good spot to actually make it happen. Because if you're of the belief that, the West sucks and the West is terrible, well, then there you go, right? So if the Oilers are as good as they've looked over the last, 10 games, they're 9-0-1, they've won 5 in a row, maybe they're the team that comes out of the West. And again, if it's as weak as everybody thinks, and if it's going to be easy to come out of the West, then you're playing against a team coming out of the East that's all beat up. So it's going to be a fun run through the playoffs this year. A lot of pressure on the Oilers, too. With those 100-point back-to-back seasons, it does add extra pressure. Kirill Kaprizov could return to the lineup for the Minnesota Wild on Saturday. Sundqvist may as well. That's as close to an answer as Dean Evason would give today, according to Jesse Pierce. Kaprizov, getting him back would be huge for Minnesota, even though without Kaprizov, their record has been really, really good. I think they'll only be better when Kaprizov gets back. Do miss him in the lineup, and it would be nice to see him pass the 40-goal mark. He's sitting at 39 goals. It'd be a shame if he didn't reach 40 goals this year. Also, good news for Toronto fans today. Ryan O'Reilly taking contact at practice, meaning he's very close to a return and could be back in their next game. Once a player sheds that non-contact jersey and is a full participant in practice, they're very, very close. And so, yeah, he could be cleared and play in their very next game. Bedard Watch. Everybody ready for Bedard Watch? Here you go. I always put this towards the end of the video because, again, I want to make sure that for people who are like, I don't want to watch Bedard Watch, I don't care. They can just go ahead and say, all right, I watched all the important stuff. Bedard, a goal and 2 assists and first star last night against Saskatoon. So they lose the game 4-3 in overtime. But on all 3 goals, Bedard factors in. And he now has, I believe it's 11 points in 3 games. Regina still leads the series 2-1. If they can win that 4th game, they definitely put Saskatoon behind the 8 ball. But Bedard's been fantastic in the playoffs thus far. And playoffs in the NHL, Florida is now above the Islanders. With last night's result, they have 87 points in 78 games, the same total as the Islanders, but they have 34 regulation wins. The Islanders have 33. And then right behind them, with 86 points in 78 games, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have 29 regulation wins. So, going to be an interesting, fun run down to the end here. These teams all having 4 games left, so there's no more talk of games in hand. I remember when Pittsburgh had games in hand on almost everybody, and now they don't, and they're sitting 1 point out of the playoffs. So it's going to be a really interesting run down the stretch here, and we'll see whether or not Pittsburgh can get it together. Because if they don't, then a really long playoff streak comes to an end there, and that would be worthy of a video as well, looking at how long they've been in the playoffs and all of the championships and everything that's been won during that playoff run. And then the question that we would ask, if they do miss the playoffs, what do you do in the offseason? And do Penguin fans immediately request the dismissal of Ron Hextall? Questions to be asked. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.